Okay, so this is going to be our first workshop on Photoshop. It's very similar to Illustrator. On the left, we've got our tools. On the right, we've got our different panels. So first, we're going to create a new file. You can go up to File, New, or Command N is the shortcut for that. On your name, title it Principles of Art, your name, and then one of two. In Photoshop, you can only have one artboard at a time, unlike Illustrator. If you remember in Illustrator, we had all 5 artboards displayed together. In Photoshop, you can only do one, and so we're going to create our Principles of Art kind of like a flyer, like a 2-sided flyer. So I think it'll make your life a little bit easier, okay? On your width, make sure it is set to 8.5 inches. Okay, if you set it to pixels or centimeters, millimeters, points, picas, columns, it is not going to be the correct document size and document format. And you'll have to resize your document and it'll create a whole lot of extra work later. So 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches tall. And really important, you need to make sure your resolution is set to 300 pixels per inch. Okay, if you've ever seen those really pixelated or grainy photos, that's because the resolution was not high enough. Okay, our resolution for print, anything that we're going to print out, is always going to be 300. Okay, the resolution for web is 72. And there is such a thing as having too high of a resolution. Basically, the higher this number is, the slower your Photoshop is going to operate. And so keep it at 300. There's really no reason to go above 300. And lastly, always make sure that you are working in RGB color mode in Photoshop, okay? We print in CMYK, but if you work in CMYK, it disables certain features on Photoshop, so we always work in RGB, okay? So once you've got all of this correct, go ahead and hit OK, and it's going to pull up your Photoshop document. Okay, one of the most important things about Photoshop is understanding how it works or operates with layers. So I keep my layers panel open about 99.9% of the time. If you don't see layers over here, you can go up to Window and make sure and check layers. Okay, if you're ever missing any of your panels over here, remember they are always under the Window tab. Okay, so what I mean by layers is if I use my rectangle tool and I just start drawing a bunch of squares, okay, and I'm gonna change them to different colors so you can get the full effect of what I'm talking about here. If I change these all to different colors and I go back to my select tool or move tool, you can see that they are layered on top of one another. The black one is on top, therefore it's on top visually. Green is below that, blue is below that, and then finally red. If I were to drag these objects up in the layers panel or down in the layers panel, that's going to rearrange how I see things in Photoshop. Okay, you can also toggle the visibility. So if I don't necessarily want to delete an object, I can just hide it. Okay, it's still there. I can turn the visibility back on, but it's just hidden. So y'all can probably hear my dogs, sorry. Also, if I'm trying to hide or show a lot of things at one time, I can simply click, hold down, and just run my finger up or down my trackpad. Okay. I'm going to delete those, get back to blank slate. Go ahead and hit Command R to make sure that your rulers are on. Okay, we are going to set our guides a 1/2 inch from every side of the page, just like we did in Illustrator. But in Photoshop, you don't have to drag in the rulers and, you know, hold down shift and count your hash marks and all that stuff to make sure you're at a 1/2 inch. What you can actually do is go up to View, New Guide, and you can choose the position. So we'll just start with vertical because we're going to switch to horizontal later anyway. So if I position it at 0.5 inches and then I hit OK, I know that guide is exactly a 1/2 inch in from my document. So if I'm wanting one over here, I know my document is 8.5 inches minus a 1/2 inch. Okay, now I need to set my other one at 8 inches. So new guide, 8 inches. And now I'm going to go vertically or horizontally. It kind of depends on which way you think about it in your brain. I always think of it opposite. So a 1/2 inch, and then again, if my document is 11 inches tall minus a 1/2 inch, I'm going to need to set my last guide at 10.5 inches. New guide, 10.5 inches. Okay, here's another reason why it's very important that you have the size of your document the correct size. If for some reason you did not create your artboard the correct size, you can either X out of your file and just start a new file, or you can go up to Image, Canvas size, and resize it. So mine's 8.5 by 11, so I don't need to resize. You can double check your DPI at image size. Okay, DPI or PPI, it stands for pixels per inch or dots per inch. I kind of use them interchangeably. And remember that resolution needs to be set to 300. Okay, let's go ahead and Command S, or you can go up to File and click Save. Let's go ahead and get our file saved where we want it to be. I want mine saved on my desktop, and then I will organize it later. Your name should already be correct since we titled our document, and always leave your format as Photoshop while you're working on your file. Okay, we'll talk about JPEGs later, but for now we want to save in Photoshop. So if your document says .psd at the end, that is correct. That .psd is a Photoshop file. Okay, I think some people today were having issues. They used like a slash or a colon or some kind of funky character. If you try to save your document with a weird character such as a slash, it'll say could not save as blah 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 because the file name was not valid. That just means that you've got some kind of funky character in there. So I'm going to take out that hyphen that I had in there and make sure it says 1 of 2. And then it should save for you. Mine's replacing because I've already done this today. I'm actually going to put 02 at the end of mine. Okay, so I've saved. Remember, this little dot, this little circle will clear out when you are on the most recently saved version of your file. Okay, if I were to do something like create a square, remember that dot pops up to let me know, hey, you've done something since the last time you saved. Hey, pups, stop fighting. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is use our text tool. You can hit T for the text tool or the type tool, or you can click on it. Sometimes when you first start out on Photoshop, it'll take a while to initialize that type tool. We just don't have the fastest computers with the biggest processors or anything like that. So it's fine. Once it's like it's got to get warmed up. So once it gets warmed up, it'll be fine. Okay, so just like in Illustrator, you want to click once for your headers. Again, it's thinking. Hey, psst, psst. Hey, stop, stop. Click once for your header and just type heading. Note that Photoshop saves or just automatically reverts to the most recent font and sizing that you used last time you worked in Photoshop. So mine is set to Museo. Just pick like a generic font, and you can double click your type to highlight that word, and remember you can change your font size. So I'm going to leave mine at 30, and I'm going to leave mine left aligned and Museo, sure. Remember, you'll get to customize your fonts and stuff later. So I'm going to go back to my move tool, and I'm going to move it up here to where it intersects, or to where those guides intersect, okay? Now I'm going to go back to my type tool, and I'm going to draw a paragraph box, and this is going to be for my body copy. Okay, I don't want my body copy to be as large as my heading, so I'm going to reduce the size to about 14 point. Hey, dogs. Psst. If I use my